I'm Eric Parker. This morning on CT 22. This past week, the death toll from the pandemic surpassed 1 million in the United States.
1 million COVID deaths. 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable losses. Each leaving behind a family, a community, forever changed because of this pandemic.
This morning, one of the world leaders in the fight against the virus talks about the vaccines in development and the research going on right here in Connecticut to help those who experience issues long after the initial infection. Dr. Akiko Iwasaki from Yale joins us. And the state political conventions are over, and now we're learning who will be trying to win over voters in the August 9th primary. Plus, a girl from the other side of the country takes on a project to learn about a Connecticut police officer who died in the line of duty. We're talking with her and with the Newington Police Chief. That's in our Sunday Spotlight. It's all ahead this Sunday, May 15th. CT 22 starts right now.
From WFSB, this is CT 22 with Eric Parker, sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Good morning. As we said in the open, the official U.S. death toll from COVID has now surpassed 1 million, and the case counts continue to tick up. Here to talk about what's happening behind the scenes to deal with the virus, the variants, and the new vaccines is Dr. Akiko Iwasaki, Sterling Professor of Immunobiology at Yale. She's a leading scientist in the country and in the world in the fight against COVID and long-haul COVID. Dr. Iwasaki, thank you so much for being with us. And I want to start with nasal vaccines because there's some exciting developments you're looking at that may be a big deal in this fight. Tell us about that.
Yes, thank you for having me. So we are working on a new type of vaccine that we can deliver through a nasal spray. So what's different about this vaccine is that it provides immune responses in the nose and in the throat that allows a person to become protected from infection and not just severe disease.
I know one of the things that's been important to you throughout this entire process is to not talk like you're writing a medical journal, that all of us talking about COVID in the media and the scientists talk in a way that people understand. And I saw you quoted as saying it's like having a guard outside the door rather than inside. Explain that, because that might be a good way for people to understand why this might be different. How does that change our protection?
Yeah, so the immune system is actually divided into different compartments. And in the mucosal immune system, which is what happens in the surface of the nose and the mouth and the throat, it's separate from what's circulating in the blood. So the nasal spray vaccine allows immune response to be developed within the nose, within that mucus layer, which is really outside of our body. And if we can coat that mucus layer with immune defense molecules like antibodies, it's like putting the guard outside the door instead of inside the door to protect against viruses. So we can capture the virus before it can even enter our host cells.
I know you're very hopeful about this and you're seeing good things in your research. Nobody likes to get shots, doctor. I don't have to tell you that. When is this something that we might see? When could this be something that will just be available for patients?
Yeah, so we are currently trying to test this in a larger animal models, and so we can test it in humans soon. Hopefully, if we can raise enough funds to do this at the early next year.
And this is something, you know, we talk a lot, and we're very lucky in this area to have so many great health facilities, so many great institutions of research, like where you are there at Yale. People watching this show here in Connecticut, they should be proud that this work's happening right here in their state, right?
Absolutely. Yale is making a lot of contributions in not only understanding the COVID-19 disease, but also in developing vaccines and testing. Saliva Direct also came out of Yale.
And I want to ask you also about long COVID, because I know that that's something that you've dealt with. We've heard these stories of people months and now even longer having still some symptoms continuing, in some cases very severe symptoms. You're also looking at that. What have we learned about that as this pandemic has stretched on?
So we're learning more and more that long COVID happens in a lot of people, estimated to be between 10 to 30% of the COVID survivors will develop long COVID. That's a large number of people because Omicron, for example, has infected so many people. And even if a fraction develops these kinds of long COVID, it's a serious issue within the society, both with respect to the people who are suffering from long COVID, but also just in the workforce, we're losing people because of the debilitating aspect of the disease.
And I know in preparing for this interview, it can be a wide range of what long COVID can mean. Is that what you've seen, that in some people it might be a lingering cough, and other people it might be such complete exhaustion that they basically can't leave their home? Does that make this sort of a tough thing to study, that it can present differently in different people?
Yeah, that is the tough thing about the long COVID, is it's not one disease, and it involves more than 200 symptoms. Some people suffer from mild symptoms, while others, as you say, are completely debilitated by the disease. And a quarter of long COVID people just cannot go back to work. So that's a severe impact on the society.
This might be a dumb question. There's no other way to say it than to phrase it that way. But is this unusual with COVID, that there are these long symptoms? Are there other viruses out there that, as you study them, we expect to see some percentage of people have some longer effects? Or are we hearing about it because it's COVID and we're covering it a lot, or does this exist elsewhere?
It certainly exists elsewhere. COVID is not the only disease that causes long-term symptoms like this. In fact, many other viruses and some bacteria and parasites can also cause similar type of long-term symptoms, known as ME/CFS. So this has been known for many years, but it really came to light because so many people are suffering from long COVID that we're now talking about these types of diseases.
Where does the research focus on the long COVID? Is it about preventing it in the first place, finding better treatments if someone just becomes infected to try to keep it from becoming long COVID? Or does the research focus on how to treat those long-term symptoms?
We are focusing on all of those things. First of all, it's very important to prevent the occurrence of long COVID, because once you get it, it's much more difficult to reverse that course. For example, vaccines and, of course, mask wearing. If you don't get exposed to COVID, obviously you won't get long COVID. There is some effect of vaccination in reducing the rate of long COVID. The other thing is, once you've got the long COVID, what do we do? And so there is no good therapy or even a good diagnosis out there. So we're working on everything from diagnosis to understanding the different diseases that may be called under the umbrella of long COVID, as well as testing potential therapy.
I just have about a minute left, and I just want to ask you this. Obviously, you're a world famous scientist in this area, but you're also just a member of society. And I'm sure people come up to you in the grocery store and think they can pump you for information about all this. Have you been hearing more about it lately? Because a lot of us feel like we've just heard anecdotally more cases going around, more people talking about it. What are you telling people who are saying, what do I need to know right now just generally about COVID? We got about 30 seconds left. What can you tell them?
Well, long COVID is really happening, and it's real, and people are suffering from it. And the more transmissible the variant, like the Omicron is, the more people who are going to get long COVID. So it's something that the society should be talking about and should be cautious about. And so I cannot emphasize the importance of mask wearing and vaccination to prevent long COVID from happening.
All right. Well, good advice, and certainly your research hopefully leading to some new developments in that vaccination area. We'll be keeping an eye on that nasal vaccine you're working on, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you so much, Dr. Akiko Iwasaki, the Sterling Professor of Immunobiology and Molecular, Cellular, and Developmental Biology. That's a long title, at Yale. Thank you very much for being with us here on CT22.
Thank you so much.